A New York court finds former US President Donald Trump liable for sexual abuse.
Life in basements for frontline residents as Ukraine gears up for a long-awaited counter-offensive.
On Wednesday, Interpol will launch an operation to identify 22 women, the majority of whom are suspected to be cold case murder victims.
After the first semi-final, 10 out of 15 countries have made it through to the finale of the Eurovision Song Contest.
Magazine columnist E. Jean Carroll emerges vindicated from a New York court after the jury found former US President Donald Trump liable for sexually abusing her in 1996. Although the charge that Trump raped her was rejected, Carroll was awarded $5 million in damages in a judgment that may haunt Trump's re-election ambitions. Trump immediately lashed out with a statement on his social media site, claiming again that he does not know Carroll, and described the verdict as a disgrace and a continuation of the witch hunt against him. Trump's lawyers said there will be an appeal.
Strange verdict. This was a rape claim. It was a rape case all along, and the jury rejected that, but made other findings. So we'll obviously be appealing those other findings, but they rejected her rape claim, and she'd always claimed this was a rape case. So it's a little perplexing.
Because the trial was in a civil court rather than criminal, Trump will not be required to register as a sex offender. But the verdict comes as he is facing a raft of other legal cases, including hush money paid to a porn star and his activities during the US Capitol insurrection.
Ukraine's southern front lies just 7 kilometers from the town of Orikhiv, where some 1,000 residents are trying to survive incessant shelling, waiting for a major Ukrainian offensive. Life is mostly lived in basements, where meals are taken and touches of spring keep up spirits. Outside, there's so much destruction.
Дуже сумно і прямо до плачу. Кожен день приходиш. Сьогодні їду на роботу, стояв дом. Їду вечором після роботи, дома немає. Це дуже сумно. І плакати можна кожен день. Ну, нельзя. Вороги цього не дождуться.
The shelter is beneath a local school, and it's where people can take a shower, wash clothes and get a meal. As the war grinds on, food is becoming increasingly important across the country. In Kyiv, volunteers are getting creative to feed soldiers fighting on the front. They're using nuts and dried fruit to make up energy bars for the troops, and they're also adapting a Ukrainian favourite, the traditional beetroot and cabbage soup, borscht. They're making a version from dried vegetables, which can then be rehydrated.
На фронті взагалі головне – це боєприпаси і харчування. Це те, що чим стріляють і що споживають воїни, щоб була сила. Харчування дуже зручне в такому вигляді, тому що воно компактне. Такий пакет можна зберігати в рюкзаку, навіть в себе в кармані, в куртці, за бронежилетом носити.
Що, більше не їдять?
Amid a backlash against gun violence, people in Serbia have begun handing in weapons to police stations across the country. It follows the murders last week of 17 people, many of them children, in 2 unrelated mass shootings. The firearms amnesty is one of several measures introduced by the government in response.
Ja apelujem ovom priliku i na roditelje i na građane da svako saznanje koje imaju bilo kakvoj vrsti problematičnog ponašanja ili o nekom drugom događaju koji bi mogao da izazove posljedice po bezbednost učenika i škola da prijave policijskom službeniku, da mu se slobodno obrate, a mi ćemo u skladu sa našim nadležnostima i ovlašćenjima preduzimati odgovarajuće zakonom predviđene mere i radnje.
As the initial shock gave way to anger, thousands took to the streets to protest against the government's approach to gun crime and a perceived promotion of violence in some media. As well as cracking down on illegal gun ownership, the government's also stepped up security at schools. But in a nation with a plentiful supply of weaponry left over from the Balkan Wars, many feel these measures are too little, too late.
An unresolved and enduring tragedy. Interpol is launching a campaign to identify 22 women whose remains were found in Germany, the Netherlands and Belgium over the past few years. Most are suspected to be so-called cold case murder victims and some possibly trafficked from Eastern Europe. Interpol has asked celebrities to help promote its campaign.
In Deutschland,
België
en in Nederland.
Several women and girls were found murdered. En we weten niet eens hun namen.
Depuis des années, nous ne savons pas qui elles sont.
Und woher sie kommen.
The victims were buried in shallow or makeshift graves. It's believed they may have been transported to these locations to make criminal investigations more difficult. The international agency is hoping that publishing images of the women and what little is known about them will trigger a response from members of the public. Operation Identify Me is the first time such sensitive information, normally restricted to partner police forces, is being made public. Interpol says establishing the victims' identities could ultimately lead to the arrest of suspects.
Spyware like Pegasus and Predator used by European countries to spy on politicians, journalists and citizens must have stricter regulations. That's the main takeaway from the European Parliament committee that's carried out a year-long investigation into member states and the use of spyware. MEPs from the committee are making clear that spyware is what they are calling a threat to democracy and should only be used under strict conditions.
And we need to make sure that it can only be used in very strictly limited conditions to fight terrorism, to fight organized crime. Any abuse of it directly undermines democracy in the EU, directly undermines the rule of law, and all governments have a responsibility to counter this. And looking at the way member states have cooperated with the investigation, I think we can be critical towards all member states for not really cooperating with the work that we wanted to do.
The final report from the PEGA committee includes specific recommendations for 5 countries where the use of malicious spyware has been identified. In Hungary and Poland, the governments have dismantled independent oversight mechanisms and are being asked to restore judicial independence. In Greece, spyware has been used for political and financial gain. Cyprus is also accused of exporting the technology to third countries. And in Spain, the report asks for a fair investigation into 47 cases where it's unclear who authorised the deployment of the spyware. One of the MEPs in charge of the investigation told Euronews that throughout the process she was pressured by national interest who were trying to influence, delay and even block the committee's work.
But you know what, if we tolerate in the European Union that journalists are being spied on with spyware, lawyers, government critics, opposition politicians, but even members of governing parties who are then being blackmailed. If we accept that, then democracy is dead.
The concerned member states have till the end of the year to abide by the new conditions. Otherwise, the European Parliament is asking that these spyware technologies be banned.
It's a game that could change the course of the season and perhaps history. AC Milan face Inter in the first leg of the Champions League semi-finals on Wednesday night. The city has been bustling with fans all week. Milan is historically and equally divided between Inter and Milan fans, but this time around the rivalry has also involved much of the rest of the world.
Where are you from?
Qatar.
Will you be watching the game on Wednesday?
Yes, sure. I'm here only for the derby.
I'm a sport journalist from Saudi Arabia. I'm fans of Inter Milan. I hope that Inter Milan get to the final.
I'm from Poland. I'm going with my friends from London. We're going back here for the game against Inter. So I think it's gonna be 1-1.
The game has broken all-time sales records in Italian football with a match-day income of more than 10 million euros. There will be almost 80,000 fans at San Siro here tonight, some of whom paid thousands of euros for a second-hand ticket. Many of the fans who didn't make it to be here will watch the game in the local bars.
Poche ore e abbiamo messo tutto sold out.
Quante persone aspettate più o meno?
Ma più o meno all'interno riusciamo a farne stare una settantina, fuori non saprei quantificartele, però un centinaio di persone in mezzo alla strada ci saranno.
The semi-final might be the last big event taking place in San Siro before its dismissal, a much anticipated farewell ceremony in the iconic cathedral of European football. Alessio Dell'Anna for Euronews in Milan.
Hello Europe, this is Liverpool calling. We're here in this city with its iconic music history for this year's Eurovision Song Contest. The UK is hosting the event on behalf of Ukraine, so there's a real sense of responsibility to ensure that it's a celebration of Ukrainian cultural heritage.
And so it begins. Tuesday saw the first semi-final of the iconic glittering contest, with 15 acts battling it out for a place in the grand final on Saturday. The 10 countries who made it were Croatia, Moldova, Switzerland, Norway, the Czech Republic, Israel, Portugal, Sweden, Serbia and Finland.
Yeah, there was a lot of highlights. I loved pretty much everyone. It was amazing. From Croatia to Latvia that didn't qualify, but they were so good.
My highlight was Norway. Yeah, definitely.
Mine was cha-cha-cha, cha-cha-cha, cha-cha-cha.
Theo Farrance reporting from a bathtub at Eurovision for Euronews.